Now, Revelation describes the final establishment of Satan's worldwide totalitarian system, which it describes as Babylon. Harkens back to the Tower of Babel and is Satan's last attempt to finish what he started in bringing the world fully under his control. It is a coalition of political and religious entities that align themselves together at the end of time in order to destroy individual liberty and to force compliance to a universal mandate of false worship. And as Seventh-day Adventists, we have long talked about the future unfolding of the events described in Revelation 13. However, as events are unfolding that are preparing the way for what is soon, Ellen White says, to break upon the world as an overwhelming surprise, I am afraid that most of us are asleep. In fact, quite honestly, I'm shocked at the indifference as we see the foundation of our freedom and liberties being destroyed. Many of us are perhaps waiting for the fulfillment of some future event that we have in view as the key to some apocalyptic vision that we are confident we have clear in our minds. We are naively waiting for a frontal assault on religious liberty when the enemy is tunneling under the wall and destroying the foundations of liberty of conscience upon which religious liberty stands. We have equated, in some ways, religious liberty to the Sabbath, and the Sabbath only, and we expect to wake up and take our stand someday when we see a law enforcing false worship. I want to posit to you this morning that at that time it may be too late. What if the unfolding of Satan's final plan is less like a mousetrap sprung suddenly and more like a serpent that entwines itself around you slowly, that its constricting power is barely felt and therefore raises little cause for alarm? What if you are slowly being led into a trap until you are so fully bound in Satan's totalitarian grasp and you realize too late that you have been seduced by his ideological deceptions and have no power or even desire to resist because you have fully succumbed to his lies? I want to remind us this morning that religious liberty does not exist in a vacuum. Religious liberty rests upon the broad foundation of civil liberty, the principles of unalienable individual rights, and personal accountability to God. Civil and religious liberty stand or fall together. Alexander Hamilton put it this way: civil and religious liberty always go together. If the foundation of one be sapped, the other will fall. If we refuse to speak or to seek to silence those who raise concerns regarding the encroachments upon the liberty of conscience because we don't see the issue as a matter directly related to religious liberty, we have entered upon extremely dangerous ground. Ellen White said this: we are not doing the will of God if we sit in quietude, doing nothing to preserve liberty of conscience. She didn't say religious liberty, she said liberty of conscience. Because religious liberty stands on the foundation of liberty of conscience. And when liberty of conscience is gone, there will be no need to cry out for religious liberty. Satan knows that he cannot wage a frontal assault on religious liberty in the United States. It would raise too great of an alarm. Instead, he seeks to slowly undermine civil liberty because he knows that once people surrender their civil liberty, religious liberty means nothing. And many of those who are called to be watchmen on the wall, standing up for civil liberty, are not willing to speak up for fear of being misrepresented or being accused of being political or divisive. Once civil liberty is destroyed, arguments for religious freedom and tolerance become irrelevant. Evangelism 694, if every watchman on the walls of Zion had given the trumpet a certain sound, the world might ere have heard the message of warning. But the work is years behind, Ellen White said. While men have slept, Satan has stolen the march on us. To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me. Unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, than most of us had ever had the occasion to develop, each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained, or on occasion regretted, that unless one were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood the whole thing was in what it was in principle, what all these little measures that no patriotic German could resist must someday lead to, one no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join you in resisting somehow. But the one great shocking occasion, when tens or hundreds of thousands will join you, never comes. And one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy. And you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were born in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring. The houses, the shops, the jobs, the mealtimes, the visits, the concerts, the cinemas, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, is changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Suddenly, it all comes down all at once. You see what you are, what you have done, or more accurately, what you haven't done. For that was all there was required of most of us, that we do nothing. You remember everything now, and your heart breaks. Too late, you are compromised beyond repair. Now is the time to stand up for the principles that have founded this nation. To abandon those principles is to abandon religious liberty. Those who have yielded step by step, says Ellen White in Prophets and Kings, to the worldly demands and conform to worldly customs will then yield to the powers that be, rather than subject themselves to derision, insult, threatened imprisonment, and death. God has given us sufficient warning regarding Satan's final deceptions that, as I titled this message, no one need be deceived. Furthermore, God has called us to oppose the overreach and the undermining of the principles of religious freedom and liberty of conscience with all the strength and the vigor that His Spirit engenders, and to champion the truth through submission to His will and a proclamation of the message of Revelation 14. It's the message that God has given His people for this very time. It's the message that counteracts Satan's final deceptions to prepare individuals to stand on the side of truth and principle, receiving the seal of God and the mark of the beast. In Great Controversy, Ellen White states this: in order to endure the trial before them, they must understand the will of God as revealed in His Word. They can honor Him only as they have a right conception of His character, government, and purposes, and act in accordance with them. None but those who have fortified their mind with the truths of God's Word will stand through the last conflict. To every soul will come the searching test: shall I obey God rather than men? The decisive hour is even now at hand. Are our feet planted on the rock of God's immutable Word? Are we prepared to stand firm in defense of the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus? Brothers and sisters, we cannot turn a blind eye and pretend that things are going along as usual. We will wake up too late and find that we are on the wrong side of eternity. And my appeal to you this morning is found in Romans 13:11. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we first believed. God is calling for a people who are unashamed and unafraid to stand up for the truth in these last days, as unpopular as it may be, even among people who should know these things. Let us submit ourselves to God that He might give us the strength and the grace to press forward. Jesus is coming soon.